We experienced a dumb coup yesterday, and I think we might need to dive into that. But later in the show, we're going to be joined by the great Malika Jabali. We're also going to talk about Assange. Uh, will not be extradited to the United States. Nebraska's governor's death cult, and a couple other fun stories. But I think we might need to just dive right into what happened yesterday because it really threw a wrench in everybody's plans. So yesterday, as everybody knows, there was a what I'm calling a dumb coup. It was incompetent, but it was certainly dangerous, and it was quite a worrying moment for our democracy. There's a lot to get into. Um,
Yeah, I agree. And I think I'm totally up for, the more academic debates. I think Daniel Bessner is an
mhm,
interesting perspective on this. But I also think, I think people overemphasize the dumbness of the idiots that got through and how delusional they were about their abilities to do anything. Because Eric Levitz pointed out that if they had done this earlier, when
mm,
Trump actually meant something to any of the, like McConnell, to name one, it might
mm.
have, we might be in a different territory. I don't know specifically how much. But like that said, what's going on in the Republican Party to foment this and basically cultivate it over years
Mm.
is what's I think the real concerning thing.
Yeah, and I think, well, so everybody knows what happened yesterday, that essentially there was this rally that Donald Trump spoke at. A lot of, Republican members of the party spoke at as well, including a new congressperson who positively cited Hitler. They,
Just to put the meat on those bones, she said, and Hitler was right on one thing. Whoever has the youth has the future, and it's like you don't need to cite Hitler on. That's not a very
that's
Hitlerian.
an easy point to
Yes,
make.
that's any sort of leader of a yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, so that happens, and then you basically have the Capitol Police, which refused. I mean, we're getting more and more information about what actually happened on the ground, but refused help from the Pentagon earlier in this week. Essentially, let these people in, and we have video. There's plenty of video at this point now that is just showing them literally letting them in, including some videos of police officers not only letting them in but waving the protesters in, and it had serious consequences. I mean, uh,
Right.
you know,
For dead. I mean, the facts are we know now at least. There's probably more going to be coming out, but the Capitol Police said no to backup.
mhm,
And fundamentally, this shouldn't have been a surprise. They're saying they had no evidence that there was going to be some sort of breach attempt of the Congress. But we'll just look right here for a moment. Where's my? I just got to refresh my share screen. Um, right here we have this guy, Ari Kovler, on December 19th. Pro Trump forces are very excited about Donald Trump's call for a mass DC protest on the day Congress counts the Electoral College votes. Many see it as the mobilization call they've been waiting for. Further down, some are preparing to shoot any protesters. They see it as a marching order, and some are preparing to storm the Capitol to stop the certification. It is exactly what happened. They didn't stop it for good, right? But they stopped it until the wee hours of the morning. And I mean,
mhm.
that's the scary thing is like those guys were marching out of there. And sure, the National Guard could have mowed them down at any moment. And like, yes, but they didn't. Right. The Capitol Police stood down, and those guys walked out of there thinking, you know what? Next time we're coming back.
Yeah.
And it's literally saying it's not going to be peaceful.
Hmm. No, I mean, I just jumping on that, like, I lived in DC for a while and I was at J20. In fact, I got the shit beat out of me with all of those other protesters. We were blocks away from any of the action. You know what I'm saying? Like like where people, important members of the political establishment were. I mean, we were far away from that for the most part. And the police reacted with such brutality, but also with a deep understanding of what the plans of the J20 protesters were, because they had been preparing for weeks and weeks and had been infiltrating groups, to make sure that they could come in on the day and, systematically arrest people, and beat them in the street, right? So for me to see what happened yesterday, again, like I think some people have gone, I think it's important to make this distinction. No one here is wanting, the police to mow down people or anything like that. The point that we're making is that the police make a political decision when it comes to these kind of right-wing protesters, right? To let them in and to not be, aggressive. I mean, these people took over the United States Congress, right? And there were deaths and those who were unfortunate, but only once the situation had just got completely out of control. And the fact that they were basically beating up people in the street 4 years ago for breaking a window outside of a Starbucks. I mean, it just really shows you what side these kind of security forces find themselves on.
Yeah, and I agree. Like Perrine pointed out, that the ultimate thing we need to fight, and which a lot of people are emphasizing, I think rightly, is the coming bipartisan consensus that's going to be supportive
Mm.
of just massive cop powers, right, and more further crackdown. So, like, maybe those guys will get shot next time, but guess what? It's going to be way worse for the left wing protesters, right? And we definitely want to resist that part. But at the same time, like, that it is a tightrope on certain things,
Hmm.
because I do think, like, this. I mean, this is the guy who came in. We have him here. Kevin Greason, 55-year-old from Athens, Alabama,
Mm.
who died of a medical emergency, reportedly tasing himself in the testicles. I don't know if that's true. Um, During the unrest in Washington yesterday, posted on Parler last month with the caption, "I wish these motherfuckers would come to my hood."
Oh Lord.
Um, and like, I mean, all I'll say is, like, I get a little bit frustrated when these people are suggested as like our rural allies. Like, these are asshole reactionaries, and they're that wherever, however close to the coast you are.
Look,
uh, Go on.
I think we should talk about that for a second. There's still some more stuff I'd like to get to with the police, but this is something that really boggles my mind. I actually would imagine that you probably have the same experience as me. It really is like the people who make this argument, the kind of left wing folks, right, who make this argument like these guys are actually our allies and we need to convince them, whatever. I'm very much about the idea that we need to push for political realignment in this country, which means bringing in some people who are conservative voters, right? That's not what I'm talking about right now. I'm talking about the people who showed up yesterday. These people are not this kind of working class mass that some people on Twitter try to make them out to be. And it's really funny to me because it's like a lot of people, especially on the coasts, have a really hard time recognizing rich Southerners. Like unless it's like Boss Hog, right? They don't understand what these guys actually are like. And I'm telling you, I've worked for these guys my whole life, right? These guys have been my boss in multiple situations. You can recognize that these people aren't coming from poverty or hardship. These are fairly well-off folks who are able to fly across the country to Washington, D.C. And of course, there's going to be some people who show up and they get wrapped up in this kind of mindset, right? But the vast majority of these people are not some kind of dissatisfied working class mass, but instead super wealthy, or at least petty bourgeois members of society who are angry about being kicked out of power. Yeah, this is
All
exactly it.
right.
I think
The
we
guy,
should.
this is from Won't Survive for More. The guy who under Pelosi's office and stole mail got a PPP loan. He's yeah, independent contractors, glass and glazing contractors. I'm sure he treats his employees great.
Mhm.
And uh, also the woman who got shot trying to enter the chamber, as far as
Mm.
I can tell, was a small business owner as well, a pool cleaning supplies. So, like, yeah, I just think, like, people know, like, you run into these assholes when you, like, accidentally have to fucking work for them and they turn out to be
Mhm.
nightmares. Like, that's where these aren't working alongside you, these people.
Yeah. No, these aren't again, yeah, these are like small business owners for the most part. Or actually a lot of them are just rich people, straight up. And I got to say about that guy who got the PPP loan, it was very funny to me to see everything that was happening yesterday, though, to see some liberals, like that was the image that they were hand wringing about, like how dare he put his feet on Nancy Pelosi's desk. And out of everything that happened yesterday, it's like, I'm sorry, that might be the least offensive thing.
Yeah, I mean, this is where form and content, you got to, like, there's a form of protest, which if somebody got into Nancy Pelosi's office, for instance, for Medicare for All and did that, it'd be cool.
Mhm.
And I mean, they'd have to pay the civil disobedience penalties. They'd probably be arrested, right? And like, that's going to happen. In particular, speaking of civil disobedience, if you try to break into a barricaded chamber of parliament
Mhm.
anywhere in the world, you might expect a bullet. I'll just say. And
Mhm.
like, but I do think, in as a way to not let this become an opportunity to push a new Orwellian surveillance state, you do kind of need to move off of the people who are propagandized into doing that. and into, like, for instance, I mean, Pelosi's calling for the resignation of the Capitol Police Chief.
Mhm.
Obviously, that should happen. There should be a full investigation of exactly everything that happened yesterday, because it, like, that's the worrying thing, right? And
Mhm.
yeah,
No, no, no doubt about it. And like, I think before we move on past like the actual makeup of these people too who are protesting, it's important to understand that these were folks who it was pure spectacle, right? I mean, that's why they're all dressed up in costumes. That's why like one of the main activities that you were seeing yesterday was guys taking selfies with themselves to show to the boys back home, right? I mean, this was 100% a kind of like poning moment. This was, political theater through and through. And you have to understand that this is a very frightening far right movement, but you also have to understand too how deep the kind of online culture is to it, as well as like the need to sort of be able to dress up in a costume and wave a flag around. It's a weird kind of proto. I like what Richard Seymour wrote an interesting piece about it, calling like inchoate fascism. Right? It's sort of like it's not fascism, but what it is the kind of forces that are the kind of forces in political worldview, which are all over the place. Like you have like anti-vaxxers and anti-abortion people, along with just like actual Nazis, right? All marching together, and there's all of these different ideas floating around, and that's exactly a kind of proto form of fascism, which is like people who want one the spectacle, and two are just absolutely against the idea of democracy.
so let's bring just Matt Iglesias in here to
Oh
back
yeah,
down the anti-defund stuff that's coming out of here, because uh, he said, let me just bring this up.
yeah, this is so
We'll have
good.
another funny Matt Iglesias tweet to cleanse the palate of this one. But he says, clearly the answer to yesterday's failure is to defund the Capitol Police and instead hire a squad of social service providers to tackle the real causes of the violence. Now, this is still like, I mean, he's not Vox anymore, I guess, but Vox not
Oh
understanding
yeah.
the basic premises of defund the police, which is like, there's the basics, just in terms of terms, is police and security are two separate things. I mean, the Capitol Hill Police should do that, but I don't think there's anybody who, on the abolition side, that looks at like the amount of guns, for instance, that people have in this country and thinks like security in general as a concept is going to go out the window. Police
Mhm.
is a very specific model of or type of behavior that the state does to people. But do you have anything you want to say there,
Well,
David?
yeah. I mean, I think we should get into because like what are the big political lessons from this? And I think the first thing that we need to tackle is going to be the question about policing. Let's get one thing straight. The Capitol Police are very well funded and very well trained. This is an organization that has around 2,300 officers whose sole duty is to protect an area of less than 16 acres, right? And essentially to protect one building. What they did yesterday was a deliberate choice. It was not a choice that came out of austerity or a lack of budget. It was a political choice to allow this kind of rally to continue. And I'm not, well, I mean, we're all pissed about this, but like personally, as somebody who's seen people get the shit beat out of them by these assholes, it is incredibly frustrating to realize the kind of difference in decision making that they made for left wing protesters versus whatever the hell we saw yesterday. Um,
Yeah, a
so
friend of the
what
show, Joshua Russell, commented on that as well. And like, I would say, look, the restraint was actually commendable. I think. I mean, not letting them into the building to terrorize lawmakers. I think
Mhm.
that it should be investigated severely. But in terms of like not mowing them down
Oh, of course.
once they're inside, like right, great. And like that's that. Like I think that like we need to think about how we would act if, for instance, this was like a Black Lives Matter protest. You wouldn't want them like, look, if you're going into a senator's office, you are taking your life into your own hands. People need to know that the Secret Service doesn't fuck around.
Hmm.
But like I think there was a lot of like, I don't want to name anybody's specific names because emotions were high, but like calling for people to start disappearing like these guys, and it's like,
Yeah, don't do that.
yeah.
You don't need to encourage the United States police force in any city in this country to start practicing clandestine tactics. I'll promise you that.